Ochre, it's just a little bit darker. And I've got some charcoal, and I'm going to go ahead and, okay, let me pause it there. So if you have 2 palette knives, that would be good. You don't have to, but even one is fine. And I like a small palette knife, and I like for it to have a bend in it. You know, you get these little cheap palette knives that are just flat. You can use that, but it's challenging to get it to do what you want to do unless it has a lot of bend to it. And you want something that's kind of small. So these flowers that we're working on are not really big. So you want the petals to be, your brush needs to be almost an inch wide so that you can make almost a whole petal with the brush. It's a lot easier than working yourself to death with a bunch of small brushes. So even if you don't have many large brushes, if you just have 1 or 2, get those out. Just make sure you have a nice rag that you can clean them off in between. And if you have something that you can soften with, like a mop, a small mop, a small sable, because we will go back in here and soften some of these colors together. As I start painting, yeah, have plenty of paper towels with, you know, so that you can wipe a lot so that you're not muddying things up, and a little piece of vine charcoal so that you can just kind of quickly map out where you're going to lay this flower in. There's not a lot of drawing with this at all. So whatever you have, if you want to draw with paint, that's fine too. Anything is fine. Any questions? There's just a flurry of activity this morning. I love it. Everybody's got their brush in hand. Some of you know Jean Parker. I talked with her this morning, and she hasn't painted since last fall and has been really sick. So she's going to try to join us next week. And if you know anybody that is an artist or likes art, please feel free to share the link with them. I am happy for people to sit in and listen and be encouraged with art, because this quarantine is wearing thin on a lot of folks. So feel free to share any information with them. Permanent rose, yes. I'm sorry, I'm just now seeing a message. Permanent rose, I noticed, and some brands will go purple. So back here in my let's see where I am so I can get back to it. 5:30. Back here in my color mixing, you see the one in the middle. Those are all. The one on the left is permanent rose, and it's really purple. And so that's not what we really wanted. The other permanent rose is the third one from the left. That's permanent rose in a different brand. So you see the difference in different brands of paint, that what I like to do is find brands of color that I like and stick with those, because you get to know the color in your paint box, because there's such variety with paint colors. So is everybody good? Do you have something that's pinky like this that you can use, everybody? Okay, I'm assuming there's no problem since nobody's jumped up. All right. So here's the next. Is everybody ready to get started? Okay. Sam's like, yes, please. How big my flower's going to be. Very rarely do flowers just face right at you like this. Typically they're pointing in different directions. So I just do the big simple shape, which in this case is just a big circle. And if the flower were facing this way, it would be an elliptical shape. And the most important thing when I'm drawing or painting flowers is to always be mindful of where the center is, because everything that you do is going to be mindful of the center. Every stroke is going to go toward the center. If this flower were facing this way and the center was, say, here, then all your strokes would come in this way, and you'd have some foreshortened petals on this side. But it is a good idea to go ahead and decide how big the flower is going to be, and that's about life size for a peony. So there's really not much to do here. This is going to be a pretty quick study. I think I'll try the pink one here and a white one down here. So I've toned the back of the sketchbook with Zinsser and acrylic green. I didn't want to do the black. I wanted to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of green around the edges of this one, and probably maybe some blue around that one. So I'm going to go around kind of keeping in mind the shape of this flower. It's not perfectly round. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of the green in first. I'm going to just to get a feeling of where that flower is going to lay. There's probably 10 different ways you could do this, or more. I want a pretty dark background. And I know watching the flower painting video from, I believe it was Kathy Anderson this past week, she does a quick mass in. This is very absorbent, this sketchbook is. But that just kind of gives me a little bit of an idea of how big that flower is going to be and a little bit of the shape. And this filbert is working really well. So I'm going to switch, I'm going to leave the green, and I'm going to switch to another size 6 ivory filbert. Got a paper towel in my hand. I wet my brush with a little bit of Turp. And I'm going to go ahead and start. All right, I'm going to stop it there. So really all I did was kind of outline. You can see my petals aren't exactly in the right place. So I have to go back and correct that. It's okay. But kind of think about the hands of the clock when you're laying those petals in. And I do later on, because you get lost when you're painting flowers, and I go back and I count how many main petals there are. And there are 9 with some little pieces in there in between. But I'm just thinking about, you know, the first one is straight up at 12 o'clock. The next one's at 1 o'clock, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8 or 8:30, 10, and 11. So just think about that and go ahead and draw the shape of that flower with your green paint. Again, there's a million ways to do this. You don't have to do it this way, but this is just the way I chose. And it went really fast. So I think it'll be helpful for you. Any questions? Okay, just jump in there and do it.
Hey, Christy, what color is the background again?
I just used ultramarine blue and yellow ochre, or a sap green.
Oh,
the green that I'm painting around, or the tone. Are you asking me about the tone that I used?
Tone. I'm asking. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, it's just a dark green. Anything you can mix up.
Okay.
And we're going to darken it more as we go. I just am kind of just getting a quick drawing on here. Now, some people like to do this, and I'll go ahead and mention it while you guys are working. I've watched that Kathy Anderson. She will put a green thin wash all over the whole thing, and then she goes in and she wipes those petals out, just so that you have a shape to start with before you start painting. And this is just one way that I figured I'd do it. So again, there's many ways to do this. You can do it however you want to do it, but this worked really well for me. So, hey, Jackie.
Hi, I'm just coming in.
That's fine. That's fine. So, and somebody else, I think it was you that was at the vet, so I hope everything's okay. So if you'll just give me a little wave when you're getting close to being done. If a few of you are done, I'll go ahead and move us on to the next stage, which is just beginning to lay some of the flower color in. Okay. Remember to wipe your brushes a lot, and it would be a good idea, if you have enough brushes, to have one for the green areas, one for the pink areas, one for and preferably a dark pink brush and a lighter pink brush, so that you're keeping your colors really nice and clean. I ended up with about probably 7 wet brushes at the end of this session. When I moved over to the white flower, I had enough that I just started with new ones. I didn't stop to clean my brushes. But if you really want to, there's many painters that do a whole painting with one brush. So you can do that. It's fine. It's just what your habits are. If you're really good at wiping your brush good with a cloth and keeping your color mixtures clean, then that works just fine. And sometimes you want to muddy up your colors a little bit. So Autumn, I love your background behind you. That wall is great. That's kind of the color of the tone of the canvas here today. So it's pretty. Watching people on Zoom, you know, and I'll screenshot every now and then. And it's funny how you can kind of compare what colors look good behind, you know, people. I noticed that in movies. Some of my favorite movies have got like, I think Sense and Sensibility has all these powder blue walls inside this old English house. And they're so beautiful. Downton Abbey had a lot of pretty colored walls that you would really notice how they set the shots up so that the faces or hair or whatever was accented. There's a lot that goes into movies we don't realize. Yep. All right.
There's
so
a 1980s version of Anne and Gables that they did it on the actual island. And they have these insane golden hour, beautiful shots off the sides of like the island cliffs and everything. And the entire movie just looks like a painting, even though it's like that horrible quality old VHS. It's real.
Oh, I love that. I'll have to look that up. The same with, I don't know if you've watched, is it Lust for Life about Van Gogh? The old version with somebody, Kirk Douglas or somebody like that. Every single scene in that painting or in that movie is like a painting. It's really beautiful, even though, again, it's an old VHS, but it's really nice. So, all right. I'm going to go ahead and move on. And if you're behind, that's okay. You'll get caught up. And I'm going to send this video to you guys later too.
With the center of this flower. That's really not dark enough. So and remember, these reds are pretty much transparent. Let's see.
You could use alizarin here as well if you don't have permanent rose. You could use alizarin, or like I said, if you want to use quinacridone for this dark or one of the really bright, like fire engine red colors, just put some green in it. That'll darken it up. But you want this middle section to be nice and dark.
Rose madder is transparent, so it's not going to cover real strong. I want to mix a little of this other color to pink it up a little. But you want your darkest dark to be in the center of this flower. And remember, reds get really powerful, so they'll get into everything. That's going to go on pretty thin. I'm going to wipe my brush off. And I'm going to go into my pile of the yellow light. And I think I might bring this green down just a bit more. A couple places. Let's see. There's a petal there. I can kind of decide how many petals I've got. 1, 2. Actually, there's like a petal there. A big one there. There. We don't want to be coloring book-ish with this. We want to try to... Well, I didn't pay any attention to these petals, did I? All right. And I'm loading the brush up pretty thick. If you want to think about the hands of the clock, let's start with this one. That's a little too bright, so I'm going to grab a little, because this is pink, I'm going to grab a little bit of green to just dull it down, especially right here in the shadows. Yep. There we go. Boy, it's challenging to get this color. I'm wondering if it's more of a...
So you will notice that the colors are very different than his. He's using a black, maybe yellow ochre, and maybe Rossian and ivory black or something is what he used on this background. So when he's mixing these shadow colors in with the petals, they look very different. So because I chose green, it's going to look different. Yours may look a little different. Just be more concerned with the value of it, whether it's dark or light. Don't worry too much about the color being exactly the same as mine or his. Yours will be a little bit different because you are probably using some different colors. So I'm pulling my strokes this first time from the outside in, and it will look, the flower looks pretty yucky for a while. It takes a while to start getting some interest with this flower. So don't worry if it doesn't look.
Quinacridone red. Grab some of that. It's really a shadow. This petal right here on the side is really in shadow. Has a bit of an orange feel to it. And every petal should go toward the center. This one's really got a lot of green in it.
You see how the round brush helps because it makes the roundness of the petal, the filbert.
The green is what neutralizes it so it's not quite so pink. All right, now I hope you squeezed out a lot of white because you need to really dip into your white. I came back over and I've got a pretty good pool of white here, and I'm mixing a pinker pile here, a little bit of yellow in it just to orange it up, and a lighter pile with the light spots on the petals. All right, so
let me go back to that for a second. Make sure you have a couple of values of your pink. If you just started out with one pile of pink, go ahead and mix yourself 2 or 3 values. We've already put the darkest dark in, and we will go back to that and darken a few areas again. But it's a good habit. Am I muted again? No, it's a good habit to always work with 3 piles, if you can, of value. Not everybody works that way. A lot of people mix as they go, but it keeps me in the value mentality if I have 3 piles there. If I'm working in pastel, I try to have 3 values of the colors I'm working in and keep those separate if I can. So that's important. So I'll go ahead and move on now if you guys have got some good light
yellow in it just to orange it up. And a lighter pile with the light spots on the petals. All right, so I'm moving in there. That's a little closer to the right color. And again, every stroke is going to go toward the center with your flower. And try to think again about the hands of the clock. So, and if your brush is large enough to make the petal with one stroke, that's all the better. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One, straight down at 6 o'clock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 petals. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wiping my brush. 7, 8. And then this one's really thick down here. 9. All right, so that looks pretty rough.
I'm going to pause it there for a second. So you might ask, is it important to count petals and to be exact? It's when you're painting flowers and things in nature, you're not going to be exact. You want to get a rhythm and you want to get a feel for what's there. But I have noticed in nature, and I got this when my son went through a mental thing. He started noticing weird things like how often there were 13 petals in flowers, just some weird thing. So there usually are odd numbers of petals if you start paying attention to that. And if you get even, like if you get 6 petals, it looks weird. So it goes back to that golden thirds and the golden mean and the Fibonacci sequence and all those things in nature that are very rhythmic, and the patterns in nature. So it is kind of important to stop and think about where you are. Am I going to get every petal the same? No, and you really don't want to. You want to have some rhythm and some design yourself. But it did help once I figured out how many petals there were and tried to get that rhythm. You'll see that they kind of balance each other too. The 2 light ones, the one at 1 o'clock and the one at 8 o'clock, are asymmetrical. So they kind of balance each other. Where if you had them side by side like this, it would look funny. If you had, one at 3 o'clock and one at 9 o'clock. So those are important. Everybody good to move on? Have you got about 9 petals on there? And listen, I'm going to send you the video too. So if you want to go back later and do it again, I think it'd be a great study, because we may be moving too fast for you, or maybe moving too slow for some of you.
But we're not done. So there's this one, there's this one.
Checking myself again.
Watch some of my friends paint flowers, and they hold the brush differently. I'm holding it like this. Again, pulling in. Now it's really easy to chalk this up, which is what I'm already doing. I want to come back in here with kind of a softer mongoose brush. I'm going to get a little bit of medium, some of this dark center color. I'm going to come back in here and pull out my center again.
Clean brush.
This nice dark. Put those darks back in if I can. I'm going to wipe the brush a lot so I don't muddy everything up. Put a little bit of green with it just to darken it even more, especially right in here. Whoops. Really the darkest right here. All right, I really like the peachy color. Which is right around in here.
Pause it right there for a minute. So once you get your darks in, I mixed up another little pile with some bright yellow. in that rose madder color, or that bright pink color that you have. I still didn't get it as bright as the pink there. But I think your most effective paintings are when you put just a little bit of a vibrant color. If you're painting lips, if you just put a tiny bit of a gorgeous glowy rose color between the shadow and the light. And the same with this flower here. You see that there's only really these 4 little strokes there of this beautiful peachy color. And the rest is either chalky light or dark phthalo. So this is your opportunity to put that beautiful color in between the shadow and the light. If you were painting an orange, this is where you would put your beautiful cat oranges, right in the middle, in between the shadow and the light. And just a little bit of it is so effective. And then throwing that rose color all over the whole flower, which is what everybody wants to do. They want to make lips all bright pink, the whole lip, or they want to make the whole flower bright, that bright color. So this is really, this is a secret right here. If you can get a really pretty color in there. And you have to switch to a softer brush maybe, because when you lay that color on top of the white, it'll mush in. So if you've already done that and the color's not registering good, wipe your brush off, scoop a little bit of that pinky color in, and just use the side of your brush to lay it on top. Lay a little pile of it on top of that wet. We're really getting a chance to work wet in wet today, and you have to handle the brushes a little differently than when you let things dry in between and go back into it. Any questions or anybody struggling? Peach. It won't be real gratifying right now. It'll get better when you start grabbing the palette knife here in a minute. It's going to feel better. And I have had a flower go really bad, and I just took a palette knife and scraped it off and started over. So they can get, especially with a lot of paint, if you get a lot of paint going here and you start making a mess with it, you just get kind of unnerved. And so the best thing is, and sometimes when you take the palette knife and scrape it off, you have a perfect foundation to lay a new flower back into that spot. So don't be opposed to wiping it off if it starts to go south. I'm going to, in a minute, I'm going to go back around the edges with the dark green, and that starts to be a little more gratifying. So as with every painting process, there are times when you are enjoying it, and there's times when you're pulling your hair out and you think, what a big stinking mess I'm making here. Who am I fooling that I think I'm an artist? So just be aware. All right. Has everybody got a little bit of peachy color on there? Peachy? A little bit? Okay. And if you want to, if you're having any trouble and you want to send me a shot, you want to text me, I've got my phone here. So if you're in trouble and you don't want to show it to the whole world, just let me know. Cammie, hi. I'm glad you're there. All right. I'm going to go ahead.
A little bit of that down here. So I've done some flowers. I'm not a big flower painter. My flowers have been grisaille and glazing. So it's another animal for me. See if we can brighten that one up just a bit. The center here.
Sorry about the squeaky chair.
Once you get it wet, see, it lays on a lot better. All right, now I'm going to get my other mongoose, and I want to come around the edges a little bit and try to carve down with the sap green and a little bit of red to darken it.
If you're working, I'm going to pause it here. If you're working, I have a little note here on the video that if you don't have one of these nice mongooses, which is a long, flat, just a sharp, flat sable will work. Just something that you can go around the edges and kind of cut in back into the flower, so you don't have to have the mongoose. In fact, it's a little soft for this. And I'm watching what I'm doing here a little bit more with the shapes of the petals as I go around the edge, carving them back down.
Just to carve out the shapes of these petals a little. That dark color really makes them pop forward more.
I turned the sound off here, I think, because my chair was squeaking so much. It'll be back on, I think. I hope. Yeah.
It might not hurt to have some medium while you're doing this, because the medium helps this dark color go on better. Once you start dipping into the pink, you need to clean your brush off. So keep that paper towel or cloth in your hand as much as possible. All right, so I'm gonna lay that one down. I'm gonna come back over here to the magenta mongoose, just a nice soft brush, and I want to try to soften some of these petals a little. Just make this first layer kind of a blur. This petal down here is pretty orange. It has a real orange tint to it. I am going to try the palette knife on these bigger petals. See what happens. That's what makes these look so pretty, is that thick paint on there. Yeah, that's what you need. I'm just scooping up all that light, putting it on in a couple of spots. This is going to take a while to dry. So, just so you know.
Do you need me to pause it? Is everybody still using a brush at this point? Because the palette knife is kind of funny. If you haven't used a palette knife much, you might want to watch how I'm laying these on. You might want to pause what you're doing and watch how I'm laying the strokes in. If you've used a palette knife, go ahead. Or if you need me to pause for just a second and let everybody get caught up, I'm happy to do that. Let's see, I can't tell what most of you are doing. I see a palette knife, I think, in Peach's hand. Okay, you're moving on. Okay. We're about halfway done with the video, so we've still got plenty of time. We've still got an hour and a half of class time, so we're good. Let me hear from a couple of you on where you are and how you're doing with this. How's it going? Oh, Peach is squeezing hers around so I can see it. Let me spotlight you here. Okay, Peach, hold on. There we go. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, good. You're really dark with your, you're almost more like the black of what he's working on, right? Has it got a greenish tint or is it more blackish? Okay. Yeah, that looks good. You've got fewer petals, but you can carve those down if you want to. Yeah, it looks good. And was that permanent rose? Your color you're using?
Yeah, yes.
Permanent rose. Okay, so it does lean a little purplish. So you added some yellow to it to try to lighten it up. Okay, great. Good job. I like it. The dark background really makes the flower pop. And you're going to see I'm going to get darker with it here in a minute as well. And it really makes a difference when you have the darker, the more the flower pops. It doesn't look
black, but it's not.
It's
looks
not
black on the screen I'm seeing, but it's not. It's a dark green.
Okay. And that's the thing. That's why sometimes it's better to send me text. The pictures don't always come out right. So that's important too. Looks good though. And also remember, when you use a black background, it's not as natural. Oh, good. Okay, wait a minute. I'm seeing somebody else there. Let me unspotlight yours, Peach. It's not as natural as if you want to have more of a gardening type of a feel. Oh yeah, that looks great, Teresa. Is that Sammy's or Teresa's?
That's fine.
That looks beautiful.
Sammy hold hers up.
Now, watch yourself and don't get the petals all too light. Remember that there's a variety. Oh, great, Sammy. Yeah, there's a variety. Ask yourself at some point, what is the lightest light? Where's the lightest light? Then don't let yourself get that light anywhere else. And so those petals at 1 o'clock and 8 o'clock-ish are the lightest petals.
Okay.
And none of the others are quite that light. So as you go back in and try to darken those, you'll have to use a very light touch. Scoop the paint up and put a little bit of an extra dark in there because you're going to be putting it back into such a light tone. But that looks good. That looks good. Anybody else? Let me get one off spotlight now.
Not me.
Okay, it's all right. You don't have to. And listen, this is for fun and this is playing. So if yours is getting to be a big muddy mess, it's okay. Well, like I said, sometimes it's good to just scrape it off and do it again. Norma, are you going to do something or no? It's fine. You don't, no pressure. Wait a minute. Let me get the spotlight on you so I can see you. And no pressure at all. Yeah. Just, and watch. The thing with flowers is make sure you get things dark enough because it's real easy to start getting everything so light. Then when you put the next layers on, they don't show up as well. But your center's good and dark. The bottom half of the flower is almost all shadow. If you really squint and look at the flower on the screen, the whole bottom half to the right is all in shadow. So you should be able to squint and look at your flower and see that the top half is in light and the bottom half heading down towards 5 o'clock is all in shadow. So you could afford to darken it just a little bit more. And mine's not dark enough here yet either. I think I go back in and darken it some more on the next stage. So good job. These look great. You're going to like it a lot better when we get to the next step. It gets better and better as you go. Anybody else? All right. Let's see. Let me cancel that. There we go. All right. I'm going to let it play on out. This is the palette knife work, so you might want to watch a little of that. That stroke right there was so much fun. And you're loading the back of your palette knife up really heavy. I'm going to show that here in a second.
Now, it really looks like this light color is just kind of gobbed on. And when you use a palette knife, you want to turn it different ways. It's a little bit like a fan brush. You see people using fan brushes and they make the same stroke over and over and over in the same direction, and it just doesn't look good. So you want to try to turn the palette knife around so that you're not replicating your stroke. You want to keep that dark center. So you don't want to, we may have to let it dry and come in here and pop a few highlights back in it in about a month after this thick red paint dries.
So what was so nice to me about this peony was these ruffly ones in the center. And you see that he just, you almost could see that he just took the palette knife or the brush that was really loaded and just mashed it in. Just, you kind of dabbed it on in the front. But you have to have a lot of paint on the bottom side of your palette knife. I don't know if I've already said that on here, but it's real easy to get the paint on the top of your palette knife and it won't work up there. It all need, scrape it off and put it on the bottom of the palette knife. It needs to be on the bottom, and it's really better if you load up one edge of the bottom of the palette knife, like push into your paint and load up the edge and then just lay it on. Now I'm going to come back in here with a brush and work on this some more. But if you want to go ahead and get these, if you put a little bit of middle tone in there, I put all white here, but you could also put a little bit of a middle tone pink in the center too, so that it's not just all light, because I have to go back in here in a minute and wiggle these shapes in a little bit so they don't just look like big blobs on here. But it's kind of fun. So get all your palette knife work in, and then we'll go to the next stage of using a brush to kind of smoosh these around a little bit. And that's what a foreshortened petal looks like. It's aiming straight at you. So it's just like a mush. It's just like a gob. And it's hard to paint that with a brush. So the palette knife works really good. I think this is probably the same way you would do a daffodil. It's very similar to a daffodil because all flowers, and I didn't go into my flower lesson, but all flowers are usually a cup shape. A tulip is the most cupped of the flowers, but even a peony, as it opens, it starts out in a bulb like this, or a bud, and then it gradually opens into a large cup that's wide open, but it still has a center of petals in the center that are in a cup shape. So if you can think about that, even a rose is in a cup shape. So you find your center, you draw the cup, whatever direction it's facing, and then you go from there. This is the easiest one, that's smack dab center facing us. I shouldn't say easier, but it's the most common way. Sometimes I'll go around to people in class and they've made all the flowers looking right at you. None of them are facing up or down, and that's a common mistake. Everybody just wants to do a straight-on facing you flower, when in reality, the flowers face the sun. They're usually facing upwards, and sometimes they're tilting different directions, but it's more, and especially when you put them in a pot, they face all kinds of different directions because you've cut them and you've put them in manually. So I'm going to go ahead and let it play out so you can kind of see how to move these blobs of palette knife around a little bit. A little bit more palette
So now
knife.
this one's sticking out too much. And really, if you drag this palette knife over it, you can lift some of the paint off and you'll see the green underneath, which is not a bad thing either. A little bit of a petal right there. So I feel like this one here is a little bit out of shape, out of whack. So I'm going back in with the...
I know you guys are painting. I wanted you to kind of watch this for a second because this was a really cool stroke. I didn't do it on purpose, but I found that as I came back in and carved down the shapes of some of these petals, if they felt, because they get wonky, some of the petals will get too long. And so I think this is a real helpful little segment if you want to watch for just a second.
Some of the paint off and you'll see the green underneath, which is not a bad thing either.
Too far.
A little bit of a
Went too far. I can't just back this up a tiny bit here. There we go. There it is.
So I feel like this one here is a little bit out of shape, out of whack. So I'm going back in with the green. Try to break it up a little.
See, I like that.
I don't mind that little tag too bad, really, right there. So I think painting flowers is a lot about just being loose and rhythmic with your strokes. I like that little curve. And coming back in and cutting around the edges of your flowers.
And you notice I'm moving my brush around a lot, and that's an instinctive thing that I'm doing, but because we get in here and we try to do everything just so straight and figure out how many petals there are, you lose a little of the beautiful rhythm and flow of the flower. And so I'm looking at the original flower and I'm thinking about which direction it's going, and I'm moving my hand a lot. So I think that's important to watch somebody do that so that you don't get too scientific in it and you'll be stiff with your painting. So you want to try to think about the movement and the rhythm of the petals because they really do have a beauty to them. I love peonies, are some of my favorite flowers. And I love the way the petals have those little tails on them sometimes, and they're wispy on the bottom. So you don't want these to be really hard edges on the bottom of your outer petals. Any questions or thoughts there? All right, we're coming to the end of this flower, so I'm gonna let it play on out and then I'll pause.
I think the palette knife is really the key, but these strokes are too flat right here. So the trick is, how do you go back in here with your dark? Kind of mush in. Yeah, that's
that
good.
Worked really
Wipe
good.
my brush. This is a nice long mongoose. And I want a stroke kind of coming up like that. Yeah, that's better. So you can put them on and then you can go back in and
Mush 'em.
move them around. because some of these strokes are kind of coming at us. And maybe there's a little pink over here too. That's pretty, like another flower. I don't know if I'm going to do much more to it. I wish this was a little bit more glowy right in here like his. Oh, how quick they were. I think I can improve on this one some more. But I can also goof it up too, so I don't want to spend too much more time on it. With all that thick white paint, it's going to be real easy to goof that up. All right, let's see if I can go back with my big brush, or maybe better yet, the palette knife. And I've used a big ton of white paint, so you will have to have a pretty good size batch of white paint ready to do this. I do like the curls I see to some of those petals that are really thick and curled. I don't know if I can get that. See, I got white on my brush. I forgot to wipe it. So be really careful about that, or you're going to have a big milky mess. I think I'll leave that alone. Okay, let's go. Let's try a white one now. I'm gonna have to clean my brushes up and mix some more paint, but I think I'll start. All right, so I'm gonna try now this. All right, let me stop it and go back to that one so you can see it up and close. So you see how just mushing those areas of palette knife work, going back with a clean brush with a little of the dark magenta or the dark phthalo red rose color in it, just helps push those petals down a little bit, and it kind of makes them look like they're rounded out. It's a push-pull thing, and you can get something on there that looks terrible, and again, don't hesitate to just scrape off a portion of it. My flower, when I squint, the lower right side is not in shadow. So if I really wanted to get this more realistic like his is, I might go back after it's dry and glaze a little bit of that phthalo rose color over the bottom half, the bottom right half, just to give it that dimensional quality. Doesn't look like his. There's no way you could paint one that looks exactly like his. You don't want to. You want it to be, you want to have the feeling of those petals, but it's going to be your very own. It's going to be unique. So how are y'all doing? Are you done? Kind of? You're at a stopping point? Sammy's done, of course. Do you like it, Sammy? You do? Okay, great. I love the younger generation likes their work a lot better than us older gals do sometimes, and guys. And again, we all paint at different speeds, so don't feel pressure if you are not right along with us. We really, there's no way any two of us can paint at the same speed. We're all different in how we do this. So Peach, yours is looking good. It's very purplish from here. It looks good though. It's a different, that's okay. There are, there's just a wide variety, but you are getting the shadow on that lower half. Let me spotlight you for a second so I can see a little closer. So small. There we go. Yeah, and there's a lot of glare. I noticed that when I was videoing, the dark colors glare really bad. Turn it just a little bit so I can see the glares off of it, just a tiny bit. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, big difference. Yeah. So you could put a little bit of air back in that lower petal that's so dark. Just air, in other words, put middle tone back in there just so that you can see somewhat of a petal. Okay. His is pretty dark too, but there's a little bit, yeah, at that 4 o'clock petal, that could have a little bit more light on the tips of it.
moving up in there. Yeah, that looks good though. They're pretty. And believe it or not, even if you don't come out of this with a magnificent masterpiece flower, the you know, the act of just doing it, getting used to using a palette knife, thinking about the overall shape, because what we typically do is we'll do a background and then we'll paint all the petals, we'll do a coloring book thing, and coming around and cutting it down with your background is kind of a different way than your default mode is not to just think about the flower petals, but to think about the negative space around the flower too, and use that to carve out your painting. You may have to go a little bit lighter to get it to register. When you're painting wet and wet, you're mixing on the canvas really, and you have to use an extreme color to get it to register sometimes, because that dark will just eat it right up.
Whoa.
Are you painting with the wrong hand, Peach? You're painting with,
I paint
okay.
with both.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because that way you don't try to control it so much.
Yeah, that's smart. It's good for your brain to do that too. To
Really?
use both hands. Yeah, to switch those pathways up in your brain, because we get so used to. Well, it's good. And the thing I wanted you to notice is to move your brush. Don't just hold it this way all the time. Move your brush, you know, put your arm up this way and move your arm, move your wrist, and get lots of different angles going there when you're working. Because we can get lazy with this painting. You know, we can just be armchair painters and we just do all our strokes from right to left at an angle. And we can get too persnickety with it, try to fill in all the blanks and coloring bookish. So we're right at an hour left of class. And I think when you have all this paint on here, I would ask yourself a couple of questions right now about your flower. Do I have some lost edges? Look at his and see where his lost edges are. Squint and check yourself, because you can see it a lot better through the squint. And get yourself a little soft mop or something and lose some edges. If you have all sharp edges all the way around that flower, go in there and lose some edges. If you have all, oh yeah, I don't know about that one, Peach. Yikes. Whatever you want to do, but I would.
Chip brush, it works great.
Let's see. We need a demonstration of how you're going to use that, because that scares me to death with all that wet paint on there.
Be brave.
Okay, let's see it.
Let me show you.
Okay, let's see.
Can you see what I'm
I
doing?
can see it. Perfect. Yep.
Now, just sort of see how it softens it and loses it?
Yeah.
Yep, it works.
Okay, you're just using the
Better
corner.
As far as I'm concerned.
It's what?
The bigger the better,
Oh.
as far as I'm concerned.
Wow. And I
do
get
these things all the time in paintings to
Yeah.
soften.
I do. I see people use those big knives, those big scraper things. Roger Dale Brown uses that. Don Whitelaw uses that. Scott Christensen used one of those, and he just drug the whole thing down over the flower.
Yeah, but see what it does?
Yeah, it blurs it out for sure. So you have to go back in there and find a few edges if you blur it too much. I like a smaller one just because I'm a control freak. Yeah, I guess that's what it is. So I just use a little bit of a small one. But you don't want to blur it too much. You want to have some sharp edges, and you want to figure out where's your sharp edges, where's your soft edges. On most things, there's only a few sharp edges, a face, a flower. So you can tell that at 1 o'clock and 8 o'clock or 7:30 on this flower are the sharp edges. You know, those two really thick pieces are the sharpest edges. And you've got that, Peach. So that definitely helps now, using that, softening your edges.
Yep.
And you might, I went around the edge with just a little mongoose brush, and I just softened parts of the petal. I didn't take the whole petal out, but I just especially the one at 6 o'clock, you can see how he just drug a brush down the middle of that petal. And he left a sharp edge on either side, but he softened just the center of that, which is probably kind of hard to do with that big brush.
No,
but
it-
it's
fine.
not. Okay, you can make it do it. So Shane Neal is the same way. He'll use a big old brush and get in there, and he can make a little tweak on a tear duct in an eye with a big old 4 filbert. And I'm like, good grief, I don't know how you do that. But it keeps him looser. It keeps him more of a sergeant-ish painter. Nice. Yeah, that's better. It's softer. Now I would probably go I would probably go back in a little bit with the dark background and cut back in a little bit and find a few little firmer edges, not sharp. Yep, but go back in there in just a few places and pay attention. And maybe just little nips here and there, like in between petals. But you don't want it to be too mushy, because it'll look like a powdery flower that's about to that's dissolving or something.
I think the best part of this, Christy, is watching you, how you use the brush and the palette knife. That palette knife is hard for me.
The palette knife is hard. I always felt like I was a handicapped person when I would use it. I did. I was just like, I can't even mixing paint when I would watch Shirley use it. And I'm like, I just feel so stupid with a palette knife in my hand. And so that's why I asked you guys to stop for a minute and watch. And I think if you want to go back and watch a couple more times, there is something about being close up and watching somebody handle a brush or a knife, and just watch how they're laying it on, because it doesn't come natural. It's not a natural instinct.
And like your hand never stops moving. It's like, I don't know if it's like following your mind as it's thinking or something, like a guitar player does, kind of comes out their hands, but it's interesting to watch.
And that has become instinctual for me, because I was such a draftsman with Daniel Green and learning how to draw and measure and use plumb lines, that I was very stiff. So I would step back from my work and it would all be very stiff and boxy. And because after doing the patterns in nature and trying to smooth, soften myself up with that sort of thing and not be so rigid with the draftsman thing, I have learned to be more painterly with my hand and keep it moving. I watch Helen, I watch so many painters, their hand moves all the time. They're rehearsing the stroke before the stroke actually hits the canvas. They're thinking about, they're getting in the dynamic of the thing that they're painting. So good observation, Harriet. And I think, again, just while watching people paint is important. While I can't stand to do it very long, but little segments, like that little petal on the bottom is my favorite petal. It's standing out too much, a little bit like a sore thumb. But I liked that little stroke. I felt like that was the one thing I did right on the petal. I liked when I went back in and pushed in the middle of those gobs that I had put on with the palette knife. I liked how I moved those around. And a lot of that flower was just pushing the brush and lifting it. Was pushing it in.
At the bottom, that dark, you went back in on that petal and put that dark.
Cut it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we put it on and we think, oh, it's done, I can't do anything else to it. But really getting yourself in the massing mindset of not being outline and then coloring it in, but putting big, bold strokes in is a much better way to paint, because you're thinking in mass again. You're not thinking in the coloring book mentality. So I'm going to go ahead just for because I've got about 24 minutes left in painting this white flower. And if you don't want it and you just want to watch the white flower, that's fine. And come back to the pink flower, that's fine too. I'll be sending the video out afterwards, but I will stop and make a few comments during this white flower. It's the same thing. I'm going to show you how I draw this one a little bit more with the charcoal. So if you want to grab your charcoal and make sure you have a little empty spot on your canvas or a new canvas for this next flower. And the pink flower is going to go away. So I don't know if that's going to mess. It'll be on here for a few minutes, but it might mess some of you up because we're going to the white flower. Everybody okay? You had a stopping point? All righty.
To it. I wish this was a little bit more glowy right in here like his. Oh, how quick they were. I think I can
Oh, I thought I was
improve on this one some more.
I backed up a little bit here. Let me go forward. Giving y'all a few more seconds here. All right, here we go.
Okay, let's go. Let's try a white one now. I'm gonna have to clean my brushes up and mix some more paint, but I think I'll start. All right, so I'm gonna try now this white one from another one of his studies, or one of Dan Gerhardt's paintings. I think I really like the one on the bottom. It has a lot of depth. I don't know if I'm going to do that one. I'd like to do that one because it looks better, but the top half of it's missing. So maybe I'll do it right here. So here's the center part, as if this were a daffodil. And here's a petal. Here's a petal. There's another smaller center right there. Here's a petal. One in the background here. A little small one. A little small one there. That doesn't look right. Maybe it is though. It's awfully big. So maybe I'll bring it in a little smaller. Make each one of these petals a little bit smaller. I turned the light on and it's starting to get dark, so the color was very bluish, and I have the balanced fluorescent lights on now and the color's a little bit truer. I'm going to start on this white one on the bottom as it's getting dark, and I want to try to get that in while it's still daylight. All right.
I mute it so that you don't hear my background noise. Sorry, I made this flower too big in the beginning, and so if you have this gargantuan flower, it just throws everything off, especially if you have some other ones in the picture with it. So I just cut it down, all the petals just a little bit smaller. Again, think about life size when you're working. Most painters will work just a little under life size, or small. But when you get really big, you need to get really big if you're just a little over life size. So get your size right. I laid it in with just a little bit of charcoal. And then this next segment is mixing your colors up. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of time because you got a different set of, it's very simple. There's just a couple of colors for this. So if you want to go ahead and do that.
I'm going to start on this white one on the bottom as it's getting dark, and I want to try to get that in while it's still daylight. All right, so I'm mixing up some yellow ochre and white. And I've got some sap green. I'm going to mix up a little bit of a green gray color. And remember, if you want to dull your green, just grab a little bit of red to mix in there, dull it down some. A little bit of pink in there, which is fine because I have that on my brushes some. I'm going to get some pure yellow ochre. I'm going to grab a little of this yellow light. You may see that in a couple places in the center of this flower. So that's all I'm going to use. And I'm going to use pure sap green to go around the edges.
So I'm going to pause it right there. This is really simple. There's not many colors in this at all, and everybody should have yellow ochre. I know a few people just had primary colors. Denise, she's not on, her internet's down, but if you just have primary yellow, all you need to do is mix a little bit of purple up with your red and blue and put a speck of purple in with your yellow and test it until you get this yellow ochre color. And that will dull your yellow down so it's not so bright and vivid. You'll also see that there's a little bit of an orangish tint to this center of this flower as well. So you'll want to mix a little bit of a reddish color in with your yellow too in a few spots. But other than that, it's yellow ochre and white and green. And a little bit of that cad yellow light to brighten it up in some places. Much like the magenta flower or the pink flower, if you just put a little bit of a bright color in it, instead of making the whole thing bright, it's much more effective, especially on a white flower like this. But you do need one little area or a couple of little fireflies of beautiful color, usually between the light and dark, and it'll be much more beautiful than if you try to overdo the color. All right. Everybody ready? All right, here we go. My palette after I finished. And you see I've just used yellow ochre. I did add some red in with that sap green to brown it up a little. And same over here, there's yellow ochre, so a little bit of raw sienna, but it's mostly just a white yellow ochre with a little green in it for the base of that white flower. All right, I'm going to start off with this one the way I did the other one. I'm going to go around the edges of the petals first to just kind of give myself a map of where each petal needs to go with that just pure sap green. It's really easy to lose yourself in where you are with these petals. So think about the hands of the clock and come in a little bit more come in a little bit over your drawing lines. Let's see. Think about these petals. Let's get these in. This is going to look really different because the one he's done is on a lavender, bluish lavender background, and this is going to be on a dark background. And there's some kind of greenish gray back here. I'm not going to worry too much about this upper half of the flower. We might all decide we want to become flower painters after this. All right, for the center part, I am going to change brushes. I'm going to go back to, actually I got a clean number 6 filbert here, or 4 filbert, and that's okay. I always switch my brushes first. And I've got a rag here, and I'm going to go ahead and do the dark center first. And that is very, let me just look at how it looks here. Yeah, it is the yellow ochre and sap green, or if you mixed up your green and you've got yellow ochre and ultramarine blue, that's what that is. And I'm just going to do it right here in the center first. And remember, when you paint white flowers, they're never white. You're always wise if you'll start with the kind of a green-gray color and then lay your whites in on top. Now it gets more yellow over here, and I'm thinking about that big center. I'm still thinking about the center. You notice all my strokes. I'm always thinking about the center of the flower, even when I'm mushing in big massed areas. You're better if you're a little dark in this area. Don't get too dark. You're not as dark as the pink flower, but it's a green-gray color. So it's a little bit of your yellow ochre and white mixture with a little sap green in it. Lay it on. If you've got a white canvas, it's going to look really dark. If you've got a mid-tone canvas, it won't look as dark. But kind of check this according to my value here, and don't get too much darker than this. Yeah.
This is Teresa. You said that was the green gray was yellow ochre and what now?
It's your yellow ochre and white mixture with a little bit of sap green in it.
Okay, thank you.
A little bit of your green in it, just to green it up. That's what it is. And again, I'm thinking about the center as I'm laying all these in. I'm just massing them in really quick. I'm not even thinking about petals so much as I am just big blocks of dark area and kind of their shape. If you look at the right, the dark on the right, it almost looks like a bow shape. You know, if you need to think about, does it look like bunny ears? Does it look like a piece of pie? What does it look like? Just try to think in abstract shapes right now as you lay these darks in. Because if you get too caught up in petals, your flowers are going to look kind of contrived. So don't be thinking about the petals right now. Think about the abstract dark shadow shapes.
Christy?
Yes.
Christy?
Yes, David.
I'm seeing you, but I'm not seeing the video for some reason.
Okay. Probably just if it's your phone, you probably need to swipe again because
Again? Yeah, that's what I've been doing, but I'm not
you can't
getting
find
any
it. And your phone might have gone on rest. Sometimes it does that. You've got, if you're on your phone, you've got 3 windows. You've got you've got the gallery of people, and you've got I'm not sure why it's going off. Is anybody else having trouble? You can see it okay? When you press your button, David, to reset it, what happens? Does it take it off? Because I'm thinking your phone might just be going to sleep, on sleep mode or something. But you can see me.
Phone is persnickety anyway, trying to use the phone on the...
Yeah.
But I don't have any other way to use it, and the battery goes out before the class is over.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can.
So
can you plug it up so that you can?
Yeah, I got it plugged up, standing up.
Okay. Okay.
Plugged in, standing up.
I'll get this video uploaded to YouTube as soon as I get off here, and I'll get those links sent out to you so that you can watch it again. I'm sorry, I don't know how to help you with that.
It's okay, thank you.
Oh, no problem.
I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything missing.
No.
I've got yellow on the brush now, so I can put some yellow on this petal. Whoops, a little bit too light, but we can correct it. A little bit here. A lot up here. It's just yellow ochre with a little white. It's pretty soft. That one's a little bit more yellow as it goes down the petal. A little bit of yellow here in the center. Think about the center again. Here's the center of the flower. So all your petals need to go toward the center. Now I'm going to try this big egbert. Let's see what it does. And I have my yellow ochre and white mixture. And I'm just going to smush it on and pull it toward the center. Didn't do too good. Paint's a little thick. This is another really light one. I'm going to mush it, pull it up, twist it. Thinking about the center. I'm going to mush it, pull it up, and twist it. Same here, except I'm going to pull it straight up. Over here, not quite as white, so I'll probably need to have that mixed down with a little. If you're not sure, just use yellow ochre and green. It's easy to go back in here and lighten these up. You don't want to go too light with it though, to start with. Over here, this side's a little bit darker than this side. And then let's see about the palette knife down here on the bottom. And this is a good way to use your extra paint. You can come back in here and just load up one side of the palette knife and pull that up. This petal is a little more squared off. This one has a little more almost pure white on the end. That one's all in shadow. And then there's some really beautiful bright yellow in the center. Let's see if I can get that first. It's kind of an orangey yellow. Some brighter here. Let's see, I've got a little bit of an orangey color up here. Let's see what happens. Yeah. And we don't want it to look like a daffodil. So be careful and don't overdo that. Wiping my brush. I'm sitting way back from it to video, but just remember that you'll do a better job if you stay back. This is in the shadow. This is in shadow.
If you can think, let me make sure I'm not muted. No, if you can think about 2 steps right now, if you can think about laying in these big blocks of color with your brush or your palette knife, and then going back with a brush and kind of chipping them together and tweaking their shape a little bit with a brush, maybe even just a clean brush, because it should have enough paint on the canvas by now. That really works good. Now, there's really only 3 big petals on this lower part of this flower with some small ones in between. So think about those, squint down and look at your flower and look at that flower and make sure that your shadow, I've gotten really light on this. It's a little too light. And I'm looking at mine and I tweaked it and I toned it down some. But you want to make sure your values are close, and you want to make sure you're putting these blocks in right now of light and dark. The dark went on thin. We just took a brush and masked in the thin areas of dark, and then the lights go on thick. So your middle tone area will be where you take your brush and sort of chip them together. I'm trying to describe something that is kind of hard to describe, but that's basically what's happening. And you're going to see me tweak it here a little bit more. My orange color in the center is a little too orange, but once I work around that, it eats it up. And because I'm laying that bright orange on top of green, as it dries, it sort of soaks into the green and gets a little bit darker. So don't worry if your color is exactly the right color. Be more concerned about your brushwork and your values, how light or dark it is. Any questions? Okay, there's about 12 minutes left. I might let it play out. I may stop one more time.
I'm dipping back into the sap green with some yellow ochre in it. And that's really got a little bit more, maybe some raw sienna in it. I'm not opposed to using that. That's pretty. Yeah, it's a little bit more what I see right along in here. A little bit there. A little bit, whoops, there. A little bit here. That just warms it up a little. That's some raw sienna.
And I didn't tell you guys raw sienna. You can make your yellow ochre do this by adding just a little bit of orange to it. Just going back in there with just pure yellow ochre will darken that. But it brightened it a little bit to make it a little bit more like his color. Just like I said, it warmed it up a little bit right in there, so that it wasn't just that drab gray-green color.
So this glowy area in the middle, I want to make it a little bigger than it should be, so that when I lay some other colors in, I don't completely lose it all. I want to lay this thick paint back in the top. I don't want to lose it all. And I'm going to go back around the edge with the dark green again. So that'll really help it. So now here's where you need a good pile of your white with a little bit of yellow ochre mixed in. You don't want this to be pure white. And then you could grab a little of that cad yellow light too. That just brightens it up a little and puts some sunshine in it. All right, so here we go. Before I do that, let me go one shade lighter up here before I do that, just to give it some texture. If you're going to work your way from dark to medium, then light, it's better to start with the darkest dark. I can go back in and push some of this dark again, but that's too light. Small palette knife, I have a little bit more control with than a really big one. So I'm going to start off with that before I add this really light. So here I go now. I'm going to start here. That's a big gob. There.
So if you feel really uncomfortable with this palette knife, you notice what I did first is I just put a little bit of a medium color, not the really, really light yellow ochre and white. And I kind of made a place first. I kind of did a rehearsal stroke where I just kind of pushed in and kind of looked to see, does that look like the right direction for those petals? And then I went back and gobbed it on. And I mean, there's a crap load of paint on there. I mean, I've got it down here today and everything's dry except those big gobs. So they're still, they've skimmed over, but when I touch them, there's a big gob on my finger. So they're going to take a long time to dry. Just be mindful of that. But if you feel uncomfortable with it, just start off with a little bit of a medium tone, not too light, and make a place, push in there and make a place for it first before you commit to that big gob of white, of almost white color. And again, I'm kind of turning my palette knife different directions to get different kinds of strokes.
Remember the center. Always be working your way toward the center. There's a little bit of dark in the middle of these petals. So I'm going to come over here and grab.
Okay, so this is a good one you might want to stop and watch for a second. So I laid the big blobs of white in. Now I'm going to get a little bit of a darker value, and I'm going to go smack dab in the middle of some of those blobs to break them up, because you can, what happens is you get so much light gobs on there that you totally lose the depth of that center part. So you might want to watch this for just the next minute or two.
I'll put a little bit of red with my greenish color to dull it down so it's not so green. I'm going to come back in here and put a little bit of dark back in there. Let's see what happens. Yeah.
See, that gave the petal a little more of a, hold on.
Maybe some here. That's too dark. I'm not loving that one. Let's see what it needs. Let's go back with a mongoose brush that's soft and some pure sap green with no white or yellow in it. I want some nice dark. I might have to keep squeezing that out. You can put a little ultramarine blue with it if you want to darken it. All right, so I want to come back in here. Really darken this up. Kind of reshape these petals a little. They're kind of squared off. It's really looking like a buttercup. And that is not what it is. Remember, your darkest darks will have a lot of reflections in them if you don't knock those off before they dry, going left to right. And it does work better to put a little medium with it. Whoops, not too much medium. This one feels too big here. So let's see, put a little bit of dark right there. And it's really dark on this upper part right here. Let's see if I can get that in. Super dark.
You see I put blue in with that. It's really dark, maybe too dark. You can really also see how certain strokes catch reflection. If you look up on the upper right corner, you can see how that downward stroke is catching a lot of reflection. So again, as you're working, if you can be mindful of that before you finish at the end of your session, to take a soft brush and knock those reflections off, because they're going to dry there, and they're going to always be there unless you knock some of those down. You want to see your nice brushwork in there, but you also want to be careful when you're using these really dark colors. So again, the darkness is coming on those center petals from the deepness of that thick paint on there. I went to try to put some dark back in those because they were just too white. Squint your eyes a lot. Don't forget to squint. When you're squinting, look at your reference, look at yours. Look at them both at the same time. Flick your eye back and forth and look at the two and see what needs adjusting. I know it's hard for you to watch and listen and paint at the same time, so kudos to you guys. I know. I'm going to go ahead and let it play out. It's only about 6 more minutes, 5 more minutes really.
All right, I'm going to clean my brush now, and I'm going to get another mongoose that's clean. I want to come back in here and wiggle some of these transitions on these petals a little so they're not so. Keep wiping your brush, zigzag it. There we go. That's better. And then peonies have these ruffledy edges that I don't really have. Let me see if I can push into the white and see if I can get those a little more ruffly.
This is kind of cool too. Load your brush up.
The edges are kind of gobbed on too, like they're curling a little bit. I don't have enough texture in here, so I need to work on that a little bit more. This one has some petals. So if you put it on and it feels too disjointed, then likely you just need to come back around and pull some colors in. Now the worst thing you can do is start just over blending it. So that's where going ahead and designing the perimeter of the flower helps me first. Oops, making sure your brush is clean. You start dragging light color into that dark, you're gonna make a mess. And I mean, there's probably, normally there would be more back in here. Let me see if I can just gray that out a little bit with some kind of petals back in there. So it looks like the flower is messed up. All right. This one's a little off. This one could have some more light. And again, if you want to just gob it on there, yeah, just do it. Just go for it. All right, I want to go back to my palette knife and scoop me up a good pile of yellow ochre, and just a mixture of yellow ochre and white, mostly white. I should chop it on there a little bit.
Frank Baggett, huh?
Big gob of it right here.
Chop, chop.
So I'm using my brush to kind of double load that back side, because I'm using the back side with the palette knife. A lot of people feel awkward using a palette knife because they haven't used one much, and you just want to keep all the paint on the back side. Usually I just load up the edge, but I had such a big gob on there. You could use 2 palette knives if you want to, and scrape if you accidentally get it around in the front and scrape it. All right, so again, I've scooped up, most of it's on this back side. If you do get it around, you could just scrape it off and put it back on that back side. That's what you want. That's your goal, is to use the back. And I think a few little strokes this way is what it needs. Again, I'm going towards the center with just about all of my strokes. All right, so I scooted back. You need to make sure you get back from this. And the center is really dark right here. So come back in here and put some darks in there, make that dark enough. Just gonna give you more depth, and it's got more of a yellow ochre than a greenish tint to it, especially as it goes into the rest of the petal here. If you get too dark with your flower, then you can come back in with a lighter color and pull back towards the center. It's kind of always a push-pull thing with flowers, so you barely hit it. These mongoose brushes work great. Come back up like that. And a little bit like that. Whoops. Squeaky chair.
All right, let me go back and keep that one up for you and make sure I'm not muted. I'm not. This one, it needs some more work. I stopped here, but I could go back in here after it's dry, and I could adjust some of my colors. I got really green on the lower half of the flower, and it's more yellow. So I definitely see some room for some adjustment. I think the overall shape of it and just learning about the petals was helpful, and laying those on with the palette knife. So again, I think with most painters, you do so much in one sitting, and then you have to get away from it and come back and tweak it. With this much paint on it, though, with the palette knife, it's a little trickier because it's going to take a while to dry. And that's part of the beauty of what I liked about it to start with, was the texture and all those gobs and ruffles. It was really interesting to me, and I wanted to try it that way. So any questions? Does anybody want to show me your work at this point or send me a text or let me spotlight you. Just see where you are and give you some feedback. Let's see. Okay, Peach, I can barely see it. Scoot it over just a little. There you go. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Your shape looks great. I would squint a little bit more to get, yeah, I hate it. It makes wrinkles and everything. But I would squint a little more and try to get your dark areas back in the center. Because even if you squint and just did a study of dark shapes in there, it'll make it more dimensional. But I think that you got all your petals right on. You got them in the right place. You got them in the right shape. Think about the top center part is a little bit high. If you look at how this is an odd shaped flower. It's almost like either there's some more petals behind the other one or those petals have fallen off or something. But again, I described it because I like I felt like the texture was very similar to the pink flower. So look at the overall shape of it. And I think lower, I'm pointing to your thing there, but I think lower the size of the center just a little. Carve a little bit of the top off. Yeah, carve a little bit of that off and drop it down into the other petals a little bit. But yeah, that looks good. Your shape is great. I really learned a lot myself by going back and piddling with the edges of the petals after I'd laid all that heavy stuff on, by just kind of mashing into the petals or taking them and wiggling them a little bit, because peonies are kind of roughly on the edges. A lot of flowers are. And that really gave them more of a dimensional quality. Daniel Keys for a while was posting videos and they were only like $15. And he's a wonderful flower painter. And I have one of those. In fact, I probably should have gotten that and shared some of it with you because I have it downloaded on my computer. Just shared some little segments. But watching him paint, because he uses a lot of thick paint and he really attends to the edges of them a lot. Because they get too stiff and then they look wooden. They don't look like transparent, soft petals. I don't love mine so much. I like my pink flower better than this one. It's okay. I think it could use a little bit.
I like your flower better than his.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks. I'll take that. Thank you. It was very fun to paint and it was very fast for me. And I think you guys are getting it on there too. I can't see everybody's, but even if you got it on there, step back from it, because if you're sitting right on it, you might think it's a big mess. But if you step back across the room and look at it, you may find that it looks pretty darn good. And
across the street.
No, stop it. Also think about, don't forget your shadow shapes. I can't stress that enough, that if you don't get your shadows in there dark enough, when you start laying all this light in, you're going to lose all that dimension. You can't have a flower that's all one value light. It has to have some darks and some mediums in it. So if it gets out of control and you don't want to wipe the whole thing off, just take your little palette knife and wipe some of the petals down a little so that your thick paint is not driving you so crazy, especially as it goes near the center. On this flower, all those outer petals get very thin as they move in towards the center. There's no thick paint on the inner parts of those petals. So get your brush or get your palette knife and lift it off if you've gotten thick paint in towards the center of those outer petals. When I looked at the two paintings together, the two flowers together, the way the light is shining on here, it makes that green look blue because I've got the windows open. And I guess it's blue light coming in. I think I might go back and put a little bit of blue in with my green. I really like how that coolness looks around these flowers. His was lavender and blue anyway, which this is an indoor vase with flowers. I tend to like my flowers to look more like they're in their natural settings with blue and green out there. I did go to a flower show at the fairgrounds one time. I think it was the state fair, and they had all these beautiful flowers in these glass cases with black velvet, and I tried to photograph them and they looked horrible. I understand that they were trying to spotlight the flowers, but they look so unnatural with black velvet. So I think if you're painting flowers, you need to think about the context and what you're trying to do. If you've got a flower on black, it's going to be hard to make that work. You want to warm it up or cool it with some green or something to make it look a little bit more natural. It works. I'm not saying that you can't make it work, but I'm just saying that those are things to think about when you're painting flowers. Anybody else want to comment or ask me a question? I'm happy for you to do that later as well.
Miss Teresa, I like the white one better than I did my pink one.
You do? Oh, good. Great. Well, see, and so each time you do it, you get a little bit better and a little different.
I like flowers. This is fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And I think even if your flower doesn't come out great, you're learning how to handle the brush. You're learning how the thick paint operates. Again, most important is to get those shadows in thin and dark enough so that when you start wiggling with other light paint in, you're not losing all of your dimensional quality. The one thing I don't have a lot on my flower is a lot of middle tone. I've got either dark or light. So I think as I'm squinting, I could go back in there and get a little bit more middle tone in there. But I'm okay with it. It's okay. Especially as I look at them on my, I went back and looked at them after having not seen them for a week or since Friday, not a week, but when I painted them on Friday, and I'm kind of like, oh, especially looking at them from across the room, I kind of like those. I don't know when I'm going to be able to close this sketchbook because the paint is so thick, and I got to start painting the apple for next week here in a minute. So, that's all I've got, guys and gals. David, were you able to get back to any video? He's muted. You're muted, aren't you? Everybody's muted. Ella, I see you on here. Have you been working on something different you want to show me?
I had 2 attempts at drawing a portrait of my friend, but both of them didn't turn out very well, so I might try it again later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, feel free to text me anything or email me anything that you're working on. I'm happy to check it out and give you some tips. And I'm just so glad that you joined on. And Cammie, how about you? Is there anything you want to ask me or show me? I know you girls work on different things sometimes, but I'm so glad y'all tune in. We lost Autumn, I think. I know she's got kiddos there sometimes. Amy, are you just watching or did you attempt to flower today?
No, I was watching
Okay.
and observing, and I'm going to try it later.
Okay, good. I know you're busy. You got a lot going on. So glad you were here, girl. Her phone's ringing. She's got kids, her mom, lots of things. Mom and dad, I think. Carol, how about you? Are you getting to paint? I see you're sealing. She may have taken a break. Time you're talking.
Okay, can you see me?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, I enjoyed painting the first one. I actually overworked it and smudged it a lot, but I had done a zinnia. I'll send you a picture of some zinnias I did in college with a palette knife.
Yeah.
I love doing flowers with a palette knife.
They're fun.
So I turned the monitor around, laid on the couch, and watched you do the white flower. I have arthritis, so I get kind of tired after a while sitting up. But yeah, it was a great session. Thank you.
Oh, good, good. I'm so glad. And I hope you'll all feel free to just go at your own pace and do whatever you want to do here. There's no pressure at all. Again, that's why I like to send you the video afterwards. I do think, and I'm still trying to navigate this. I've had several other teachers call me and ask me for some tips on teaching Zoom classes. I do think it is a good accountability time because most of us don't paint unless we have a time set aside. Not everybody, but most of us don't. So I do think even if you just play around and get started and get your colors mixed and keep painting, because once I get the ball rolling, I'll paint. I'll go ahead and keep painting. But I think that's part of the missing thing. If I just do an instructional segment with you guys and we don't actually paint together, we always say we're going to get back to it later, but sometimes that's hard to do. So even if you just get your stuff out and get started and make a place for it, that's a great incentive for you. I also want to try to do the Inspire group again. I'm going to send out as soon as my life calms down. I'm hoping in another week and a half or so that I won't have the kids as much. I don't know, but I'd like to do another Inspire session because I think we all need it. We need to be inspired and talk about some things that have to do with art and life. And so I'll be letting you know when I do that again. And I don't know what else. Oh, for next week, and I'm going to send an email out about this. We're going to try the apple, which should go pretty fast. But this apple that I've chosen is I use it in my lesson on value and edges. And it's really a realistic looking apple. So it's easy to do a quick impressionistic apple. But I was hoping that we could take this one a little further, get all the colors in, and try to see if we can get it really realistic looking and develop these values. I don't know. I may find out when I paint it later that it took me 30 minutes. It may take the whole 2.5 hours. I don't know. So if it's a real quick study, I'll come up with another little something for us to paint as well as the apple, because these studies are cool. Some of them are really quick. Some of them take longer. So you'll want to go ahead and tone your paper or your canvas with a kind of a burlappy color. I'll send you the apple again. You can just use a white canvas if you want to, but I like to go ahead and put something on there. And I've already toned mine. Let me see if I can show you. I went ahead while I had the Zinsser out last week. Oh, that's not really good. I went ahead and toned it in a spot for the apples. I don't think you can see it, but this is just kind of a warm yellowish spot for the apple, and then a darker gray color for the grapes. And I've got something I closed it before it was dry, so it's got some stuff stuck to it. But I made like 2 spots for next week, grapes and apple. We'll see how that goes, just so I'm not using a white canvas. Oh, I smeared my flowers a little bit. So that's the only drawback from working in these sketchbooks is you got to leave them. I might lay mine out in the sun today and see if I can get those gobs to dry a little bit faster. So anybody else want me to spotlight and look, or any questions or comments? I so love being with you guys. I can't tell you, I was so excited to get on today, and just seeing your brushes flying around and the movement, and having Sammy on here. I'm glad you joined us, Sammy. And just getting to paint is so much fun. And so it really lifts me up in my week. So I appreciate y'all. All right. If there's no other comments, or questions, Norma, you want to show me anything, or you're good? That's okay. You're muted. You're laughing, but I can't hear you.
I was doing the side one, the other Gerhardt's one. It was beautiful.
I know, they're so pretty. They're all gorgeous. So, you did the other pink one. Oh, awesome. So fun. Well, send them to me later for sure if you feel comfortable to.
I was just using all that paint I had out there.
It is really, again, when we do these paint along things, not everybody is gripped by the same thing. So I totally understand if you want to work on something different. But I love the flowers, and I think they're great for us to practice on. So we're on for the apple next week. If you get these moved on and to where you feel comfortable and you want to send them to me, I'll check. I'll try to do critiques. Definitely get it back to you by Friday. If I have time, I'll send it right back to you, but it helps me to do them all at one time. So feel free to send them to me. I love seeing them. I've got a little folder with everybody's work, so I'm kind of saving that. Maybe we'll have a a gallery presentation together, a Zoom gallery at the end of all these studies, and look at all the work side by side and see how they look. So anyway.
Thanks, Christy.
Thank you guys, and have a great week, and be watching for my emails, and I'm going to send you out a couple of other little things this week, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a great week.